Awesome. We're live. Awesome. Hello, everybody. I am Alex from Bolt here today. You may have seen me on some of these live streams before. Usually I'm with my counterpart, Kate. And now today I am my counterpart, Kate, filling in the host role here today. Today we're going to be talking about leveling up your design. And there's a lot of different, design is a very broad and complicated topic. And we're going to touch on just a few pieces today. Part of it is what you might think of when you normally think of design, the visuals, the pretty front end of your application. But we're also going to get into thinking a layer deeper about like, what is it that you're actually trying to build? And what are the pieces below the surface that are going to help bring that vision to life? So today I'm joined by two excellent guests. Hopefully, excellent guests. They're active members of the Bolt community. Laurel came in through participating in the world's largest hackathon that we ran recently. And Clark won a recent design competition that we ran on our Twitter. By the way, if you're interested in getting involved in some of these competitions, I recommend you go follow us on Twitter/X, bolt.new. We run some fun competitions over there. So Clark is the owner of a small agency out of Austin, Texas, that he self-described as a do anything agency. Can help you build apps, websites, and design across a broad spectrum of other assets, digital, and I would suspect in the little bit I've gotten to know Clark, probably physical as well. So that's his background. And Laurel has worked at some companies you might recognize, VMware, Broadcom, and more recently also founded a agency of her own called Curionaut and has been really deep diving into AI recently. So we've got hands-on experience here from folks that are in the trenches using these tools with a lot of operating experience behind them and use them to solve real problems for themselves and clients in the real world. So I'm super excited because those things don't really describe me. I work at Bolt and I get to use Bolt internally to solve some of my problems here, but I'm not running an agency. So I'm expecting to learn a lot from these two here today. We will be monitoring the chat. So drop your questions in there and we will be popping some of those up on the screen and saving some of them for the end as well to get into. Our chat is most active on YouTube. So if you want to go over to YouTube and search for bolt.new, you'll find the live stream over there. With that, I will turn it over to Laurel to kick us off here.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let's hope I can do this correctly. Over to share. It's funny because it looks completely different than when I practiced. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
And hopefully y'all can see that screen. I'll be using these slides to go over some strategy stuff. So yeah, I'm Laurel Byers. I've been a multidisciplinary designer for the past 13 years and also leading design teams for the past 7. I've worked primarily in the B2B space on really technical products and also got to build some pretty cool AI ML features in that space. But to Alex's point, in January, I decided to take a creative sabbatical and reconnect with the arts and crafts side of me. I've always been an artist and a theater person, so I wanted to take some time to do that and also reconnect with learning all the cool AI tools for myself, right? And how I can apply that to my own career and design process. And one thing I've noticed is, vibe coding is obviously a really exciting thing that's getting a lot of people in there that have never touched code or designed in their life. I think that's a beautiful thing. But I want to level set with what design is so that we understand the depth of it and that it's not just, making things look pretty. So that's what we're going to go into today and how to apply that strategy when you're building in vibe coding tools. So let's go over some basics. First, just the definition of design. So I just got this off the internet, Googling it. But basically, the shortest, concise way of saying what design is that it's just a concept or proposal for an object, process, or system. Note that it says nothing there about visuals. And then so therefore, a designer is one who creates and often executes plans for those projects or structures. And yes, part of it's making it look cool, but there's so much more to it than that. And that's what we're going to go through today, specifically in the world of digital products and services. So I know that a lot of people think about graphic design. There's a bunch of different terms out there, but I'm primarily focusing on the job titles and the job descriptions that are kind of surrounding the user experience design or product design, interaction design. We have a bunch of different names. We can't decide title and what we do, but also sharing the insights of what we do with you so you can make better, more informed design decisions when you're building out these products. So that brings me to the iceberg, the design iceberg. This is just a very simple-ish representation of how many things go into designing something. As you can see, I know most of you probably came here and were like, hey, I want to make my cool vibe coded app look beautiful and change the type. And we're going to get to that. Clark's going to go deep into that and show some really awesome epic examples. I'm going to talk about below the surface. These are the elements that are really important to not skip out on, because if you do, it doesn't matter how beautiful you make something. Ultimately, if it doesn't work, if it's not appealing to the users you're trying to attract, it's not going to go anywhere. And that's why you have to think holistically about design and past just the visual part of it. So I want to go back into a little bit of the history of product development. So there's been a bunch of different methodologies as to how people approach these. I've worked in spaces that had waterfall methodology. This is meaning we would have maybe 2 to 3 releases every 6 to 12 months. And so we would do a lot of strategic planning early ahead, defining the goals, what exactly we were going to build. Everyone knew what was going on. And then it would trickle down from PM to design to engineering. But there was a lot of pitfalls with that. For one, it was very slow and rigid. And the other is that products often were already outdated by the time they were launched. And it was very hard to go back and fix things quickly because, these were 6 to 12 month timelines. So there's that example. And then agile methodology. Now, waterfall still happens, by the way, when there's really complex apps out there with legacy systems. It's hard to get away from that. But with more modern applications and tech stacks out there, a lot of businesses have gone for the agile approach, or they've tried and they've done some weird kind of like hodgepodge, which, is a fun kind of to be stuck in. This is a very fast and iterative feedback-driven process. And you're working very closely as a designer with engineering and PM in small groups. But the problem is you can be very siloed and limited in your understanding of what the broader strategy is and what all these smaller features you're working on, how they all build together to make that. And my hope is with vibe coding, we get a chance to kind of resolve that and redefine a process that is strategic in nature through a user experience perspective, which then helps the business ultimately. So this is just like a general idea of what the vibe coding process kind of looks like. As we all know, this is developing real time, so we'll see we'll see what happens. But ultimately, a lot of times people are skipping this strategic entry point into designing something, and that's perfectly fine. If you're going and you're just having fun, which I actually encourage people to just go play, make silly apps, don't worry too much about the the final result, then that's okay. But if you're trying to build something that actually gets a customer base and solves a problem and can become a real product that maybe becomes a startup and becomes something big, then you do want to be very thoughtful at the beginning of building things and throughout the process and testing things to make sure that you're building it in the right direction. Because you can build something fast and it be the completely wrong direction and not know it till it's too late, and then you have to start over. And we don't want that. So let's continue on. Now that that little educational session is over, we're going to be talking about. Yeah, go for it.
So, can you talk a little? I'm just curious. You've worked in like product teams at scale, and what are the because I think I've never been in an organization where waterfall has actually been used, right? Because everyone's gotten so excited about these like sprint-based agile approaches, which is more along the lines of how StackBlitz and now Bolt has been operated up to this point in time. But we're starting to see that evolve with the new tools. But what is, I guess, why is agile not enough, right? Because I think it makes sense how waterfall is this very big company, this then that sort of conditional expression that is very slow to run through. Where's the opportunity to improve like beyond what most organizations are currently doing, which is like the traditional sort of agile methodology?
Right. The places I've worked where we were trying to do agile was never truly agile. And that is the feedback I've heard from multiple people at different companies, is that it's just never actually the full clean way of doing it. And oftentimes businesses completely skip, they think, okay, it has to be these small sprints, but there also needs to be this layer that's kind of removed in the head that is about the research and defining the goals and the holistic vision that you're trying to solve. And that people just disregard because they focus on the smaller things. And I think that's the pitfalls that happen with agile. And I'm hoping, as we enter into this fast iterative vibe coding approach and seeing where that fits into our processes, that we don't abandon that, but we actually because it speeds things up more, we actually have time to now do it, because that's usually the case. It's like, oh, we don't have time for it. But that bites you in the butt, because later on, then you're like going and fixing all the bugs, or you can't fix it because it's the whole feature is wrong. And now you're just trying to patch it and make it work, and you can't build it from scratch because you don't have the time. And that's what just design in general, but strategic design is always trying to be proactive in mitigating the risk of building something wrong, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Yeah. Shall I continue? All right, let's go. So this is a little design pyramid. This is just showing the important kind of Maslow's laws. You have to have a really solid strategy, user needs, UX outcomes, before you can start considering the flows and the usability, the way that you define the navigation and interactions, all that. And then once you have a solid framework for all of that developed, then you can start really refining the visuals and the vibe and the colors. So I'm going to be focusing on the latter half of this, and Clark's going to be focusing on the tippy top. And then at the end, you'll have a beautiful, visually stunning and very intuitive, workflow-oriented product in your hands. So because this is a small, webinar, I'm going to go pretty quickly and stay high level, but I will share this deck out at the end of my presentation so that you can access all of the fun, many resources that I've linked to here. I've done a lot of articles, a lot of tools, books, websites for you to further your education on specific topics here, but also just in general at the very end. So 4 key questions to help you define your strategy of approach and just exactly what you're building. Again, this is if you want to build something that with intention, not just if you're just wanting to build something fun, that's fine, just go for it. So first off is defining who you're designing it for. So you've probably heard of personas, but if not, figuring out who exactly is the person that is going to be using this product. And if you say it's everyone, then it's no one, and you're not going to be solving a problem for anyone, and no one will use it. A framework that I like to use is jobs to be done. So instead of focusing on a specific person like Laurel, who lives in Austin, Texas, and shops at H-E-B, some of those facts are irrelevant to the product that I am probably using that you're building, and I'm trying to get something done from. So jobs to be done is what is it exactly I'm trying to get out of this product and solve for myself. So that's the framework I recommend, better than personas in my opinion. And then second, you want to define what problem does it actually solve. This is where people oftentimes get stuck on, oh, well, it has this feature and that feature and it does this and that. That's not what you want to focus on at the beginning. Eventually you'll get to how do we solve this and what is the actual feature. But first you need to just focus on what is the outcome you're trying to get at. What is this thing that you're actually trying to solve? And then number 3, how will you know it works? What are you going to define as your measures of success? This doesn't mean you necessarily need analytics, though that is fun, but that's only half of the picture. You need to know why people are clicking on things or not, or frustrated by parts of the website. So that's when you'll dig into defining UX metrics or business goals and connecting them to the product that you're building and figuring out how would you test that. So that can be through even before you build it, going through discovery research. I'll talk about research in the next slide a little bit more, or testing what you've built with your vibe coded AI, prototype. And then lastly, what's the smallest version that you can prototype and test? So I know I'm a go all in kind of person, and I have to pull back. And I've actually been doing that a lot with, my ChatGPT conversations of dreaming big, setting the vision for where this could go, including all the cool, fancy stuff that it could have. And then having that conversation with ChatGPT, Claude, to pull back what is the most minimal version that we can build that's cohesive, right? That has full workflows and sets up that domino effect or that foundational element that you can build on top of it. I love doing the domino effect because I love when things can like help the next thing that comes. And that's how you kind of want to think of your product when you're building it out. All of this, once you define this, and I recommend doing this before going into ChatGPT, but it is, capable of helping you. Then you will write like a little mini document, your source of truth. In the corporate world, we call this a product requirement doc. It can also be just a design brief. But essentially, it just lays out all of the details of these and, of course, what your priorities are, and maybe a little more detail of like what are the exact workflows that you need to build as well. I've actually linked to here a custom GPT that I made for vibe coding, and you can basically use it to help you answer all these questions. You just take a fuzzy idea you have, and it will guide you into building out a PRD, and then taking that PRD and breaking it into sprints to take into Bolt. So again, that'll all be shared soon enough. All right, so research. Research is actually kind of the defining factor as to what makes UX design. Like without doing research, you're just designing, and you're not necessarily doing user experience design or product design. So this is a really important part because it's making sure that what you're building is data driven. And like I was mentioning earlier, there's the discovery part of it. So before you even have anything to show, it's going and doing the research by talking to customers or potential customers, users, and seeing what exactly they're interested in, maybe checking out competitors and seeing what they're building already. And if you want to do something similar, or, veer away from that, or what's your differentiating factor. I like to do also influencers, which means not exactly a business that is directly a competitor to mine, but one that I get a lot of inspiration from. Doesn't have to be in the same industry. Actually, wouldn't be in the same industry, but you're like, hey, I like the vibe of this, or I like the way that they approach things, and I want to embody that in my own product. I see Alex popping in. Do you have another question?
Nope, but I finished my salad and I'm loving the presentation.
Awesome. And then another way to do some basic guerrilla style UX research, guerrilla style meaning like affordable, quick, easy, which I linked to some ways to do that in the bottom of here, is taking your vibe coded prototype and giving it to a user or a person that you think would use it and watch them go through it. But don't have leading questions. Don't like veer them into one direction. I know that there's that instinct to defend your work or try to help someone, but that actually is going to do you a disservice because you won't actually find out the true insight of like, is your product usable or not. So those are some tips here. I've linked to a bunch of tools and things that can help you do this and visualize what you're trying to build before you actually have like the UI. I mean, like visualizing workflows and visualizing personas and trying to figure out, well, I'll get to that actually in the next slide, trying to get to your information architecture. So speaking of that, let's talk about digital foundations. So after you've defined your strategy, created kind of a PRD, you might want to dig a little bit deeper into what is the actual framework that you're building this site to be. You don't have to, but it helps when you're trying to think of scalability of a product. Because I've heard, and I've also experienced in my own vibe coding, you hit a wall and then you kind of have to start over, or the code can't expand past that because it didn't start with that framework from the beginning. So some ways to avoid that would be to define the information architecture. That is a very broad thing that I'm not going to talk a lot about. But again, I linked to a few details here, and it is different than a sitemap. It's more generic concepts and how they all work together. And then a sitemap is what are the exact pages and ways people navigate to them. You probably want to think through both, but they're not the same. One influences the other. So information architecture before sitemap. And you might want to call out what are the key workflows that you go through or that you're prioritizing for your MVP that you want built in this product, and how does it interact with the sitemap? Does that make sense? What are the happy paths, meaning the things that you want the user to go through? What are the sad paths or unhappy paths the user might go through? These are the parts where design gets really juicy, because you have to think, and in the AI world, this gets really complex right now because you can't even define all those alternatives sometimes. But thinking about what are the paths that the user could go that you want to assist them if they get stuck somewhere or something breaks, what happens? And then the traditional, it's called CRUD, create, read, undo, delete, like remembering those things. But I will say vibe coding tools remember a lot of that stuff because those are basics, but it's good things to know, because if you don't know, then you don't know to go look for it and make sure it's there. So once you do know, now you can go and actually test your own product that you're vibe coding and make sure all these things have not been forgotten.
We have a question from Philip Cantu on LinkedIn. How can we get access to this link, this very tempting link that you keep mentioning?
I will be sharing all of this just in a moment. Once I'm done with this, you'll have access to the slide deck. I built this slide deck in Gamma, which is a really cool AI slide deck app. And everything's clickable. So you'll be able to click to your heart's desire.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So just a couple more slides to wrap up. I want to speak as a designer. You know, there's been a lot of talk about AI, the fears of it, right? I think a lot of us are kind of fearful of what happened with social media happening with AI and it veering in the wrong direction. And I'm an AI optimist still, but I think it's our obligation to inform people of the superpowers of AI and how that can be used in the wrong way, but hopefully all of us using it in the right way. And that's why I'm trying to teach more people about design, because I want us to be thoughtful and conscious of what we're putting out there. And it's a differentiator. So, you know, these are just some thoughtful design superpowers you can utilize as you vibe code, thinking about the ethical part of what you're building and who it's impacting, not trying to keep them in the app too long or do some dark patterns that can't let them like unsubscribe. Inclusive, making sure it's accessible. I know vibe coding is pretty good at this, but I will say with accessibility, you can have accessible components that are separate, but as soon as you put them together, it breaks accessibility. And that's something to be mindful of. You can, of course, use some prompts to help with that. There's a lot of great tools out there that are like Figma plugins and browser plugins that do accessibility checks. And a lot of AI tools are coming out that help with that even more. So just being mindful of that. There's like pretty high stats. Everyone goes through some sort of like limiting factor in their life at some point, whether it's like wearing like no contacts or breaking their arm. So being keyboard accessible and mindful of vision and stuff when you're building things with even just color contrast is really important. Intentionality, I kind of spoke to this, but don't just build everything. Like be very mindful of what you're building. Information overload is real, and that can, you know, take people away from wanting to dig deeper into your product. And then again, differentiation. You can really stand out from everything that you're doing, that other people are doing, if you're just mindful of these different areas and topics. And lastly, just some homework. I took the example of the product that I entered in the hackathon called Layoff Relief. And I just wanted to show an example of like what's a really vague kind of UX strategy or framework of how you'd explain what your app does, to getting clearer, to getting even more clear. And you can take this same thing and just, this would be my small, tiny homework, is if you're building an app, define this first and then go from there. And lastly, these are all of the resources that I did not, well, everything else is linked throughout the pages, but this is additional resources. I think there's just so much online. I know it can be overwhelming, but these are some really great books and courses and websites that I recommend that a lot of designers use. And it's a great place to get started if you're wanting to learn more. I know this is a lot, so always, you know, hiring a designer helps. I'm here to chat. So if you ever want to talk about design or have questions about what you're vibe coding and what direction you should go, feel free to connect with me. I'm on all the platforms. I'm also starting to create a lot of workshops and design coaching that you can access on my Stan store. and along with my Curionaut Consulting, where I work with businesses and founders on developing design strategy and AI consulting practices. And lastly, I will be doing my first webinar in December, and it's only open for 50 slots. But if anyone's interested in it and has ideas for me to dig deeper into, I would love to hear from you and have you participate in it. As a designer does, it's also a research thing for me to understand what people are wanting to learn. And so you can access all this here, and I will share the slide deck right after I'm done sharing. Thank you, everyone. I guess it's Clark's turn. Oh, you're on mute, Alex.
I'm muted because I'm banging my keyboard and this incredible software we're using. It is incredible. I do love the software. StreamYard, highly recommend it for streaming, but it does not mute my keyboard pressing. Excellent. That was great, Laurel. A lot of positivity in the chat. And if you're ready, I'll share I think I will need to share the link. If you're ready, I have it copied and ready to go here. So for those of you on YouTube, you'll be able to grab that right there. I'll also flash on the screen here. You can take a screenshot or write it down if you're on another platform. Question so obviously, as you mentioned, right, this is a complicated topic. There's a lot to learn here. Takes entire career to master.
No, everyone's a master now. You only need 30 minutes. That's kidding.
Yeah, I think a question that I saw that I think was a good one for folks that are just starting out is like, how where would you start, I guess, is kind of the way that I would interpret this, right? There's so much that you can think about the moments before you end up typing a prompt into Bolt to go and start building a website or product. If this is kind of your first exposure to thinking about product design and product building in a more formal way, where would you recommend like people dig in first?
So that little slide that I had about homework, I don't have it up at the moment, but basically just defining who the user is, what's the goal that you're trying to get at with this product, and how you can measure success with it is the start. So that's just writing it out. Like, oh, I have a frame behind my screen here, and I'll think of an idea. I mean, I'm a designer, so I have a million Post-it notes. And I'll write that idea and I put it there. And then when I'm ready to like sit down and be like, I'm going to explore this idea and vibe code it, I typically open up ChatGPT and I start recording what I'm saying. And I just go through this idea of what I have, and I don't stop. It's unfiltered. And then I have it summarize what I said. And then I go from there and I start working with it back and forth about, okay, so who are the people that would utilize it? Now, again, let's remember that these tools sometimes hallucinate. So you do want to actually talk to real users at some point. But using the synthetic persona stuff that it might build will help you at least get a framework and a direction for where you want to go. But I have that back and forth conversation. Actually, if you go to my Stan Store link and you get my free design vibe coding guide, I go through my exact process with that back and forth conversation. It doesn't necessarily include all of this design strategy details, but you'll have the slide deck now. And there's a lot of resources there for you to click on. But the 4 questions I mentioned at the beginning, those are key. Like, start with those. Everything else you will learn through time. But as long as you have a solid like foundation of understanding of what you're building, I think that's core. And then secondly, if you can, I would recommend defining at least what are the core information architecture of the product, like where you see things living. What I've noticed when vibe coding is that if I didn't define the navigation early on, it's really hard to go back and get it to update. So if I have that defined in the very beginning, then any workflow and stuff I build into it later, it actually is a lot faster and more cohesive.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, excellent information. We got the link out there, sent a wrong link or a not properly shared link first, but Donald's got it corrected there. So I saw like 50 people in the chat say link's broken. So clearly people were clicking it. That's a good sign. Awesome. Clark, now let's transition over to you. So if I understand correctly, you're going to be diving in on the more what people might more traditionally think about design after they've figured out who they're building for and what the jobs to be done are, and they get the initial product out, and it's time to tweak the interface and make the thing look good and make it not make you want to pull your eyes out. So with that, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think there's some perfect overlap here, because my first slide I'm about to show you is think about design first. So that's everything she just said. And then I've got I'm just going to do show some slides, and also a lot of show and tell of things I've built with Bolt and off Bolt. A lot of times I start with Bolt because it's so quick and then end up somewhere else. But tons of just show and tell in here. In the chat, if you see anything you want to know more about, feel free to ask. You can interrupt. And I've been making, here, I'll do my little intro here. Let me turn on screen share. If I turn on share screen, entire screen. Let's see. Can you all see that? Can someone verbally?
Yep, that'll
okay,
do.
Cool. So yeah, I run a little agency in Austin called Superfun. We do websites, apps, branding, all sorts of stuff. Old school, AI was not part of our business until maybe a year or two ago. So we do a lot of kind of marketing and builds and front end code. And I kind of joked forever, my job was to look at a design and then code it. So I would say, there is a header, and that header is blue, and that header is fixed, and it has these links. So I've been doing this for a long time. So prompts feel kind of natural to me. So writing with prompts has been more and more as we do more and more AI. I'm getting better at this. So again, feel free to interrupt and say, what would you prompt that? Or how did you prompt this? The other little side gig we have is we make games. So card games and puzzles for kids. This is the ultimate kind of dream retirement plan. Right now it's on the back burner as we do actual real client work. So what you may remember me from possibly is the design hackathon a few weeks back. They mentioned this was one of the winners. It was called Paystack. It's kind of a little sample site. We'll go through it in a minute and kind of talk about how this was built. But first up, I've got some slides. So let me switch over to some slides.
I do, and I do recall that site, and I remember thinking, like, damn, this actually looks like a fully baked, like, fintech funded startup. In fact, I would go so far as to say there are many funded venture-backed startups that have websites that look significantly worse than this. And just from the, before we hear your methodology but on how you put this together, I think as one of the judges of that competition, what really stood out to me is just all the little details and how there's a lot of what I would kind of describe as fancy details, but it all plugged together in like a cohesive way that really felt like, this could be aligned with the design, a fully developed design system of a company. This is one that I think we all added to the list because we were all adding stuff to the list for narrowing down the winners. But in particular, I know that this was one that just really jumped out to me as like, that's what a landing page should look like right there. So anyways, kudos to you. I enjoyed it a lot.
Good deal. I'm glad y'all liked that one. So this was a mix of, this started in Figma with visuals, and then a lot of this stuff was free from the internet. So some of these card images were from like an open library. These charts were from a place. These icons were from a place. So that's one of my secrets. A lot of times is just, tastefully collecting things from certain different resources and putting them all together. So this was definitely a mash of, started with a one prompt shot that got us like 80% of the way there. And then I spent maybe a day of adding a video background and adding cooler credit cards and adding some live play video here. This video is actually AI. That's Google VO. So I was also just playing with different technologies, which is kind of what I do a lot. But let me switch into a few slides here. So I've labeled this thing good prompts, because really this is about writing good descriptive prompts. That's where all your little design details come from. If you know front end like me, I sometimes tag in and in real code we'll write some fixes, but everything can be done with good prompts if you learn to talk like a robot a little bit. So here's what we're going to run through of just a lot of times to do a visual start. So I'll start with a design somewhere. And then a lot of times I use really long prompts. I give it really long prompts. I have AI write me really long prompts. I use planning mode a lot to write really long, detailed to-do list, and good AI can keep up with all that. So I use a lot of really long prompts. And then also there's so many templates and layouts around the internet of just free landing pages, free full UI kits, Tailwind, Shad. There's so many just ready-made UI kits that are amazing. Using those is very easy. You can paste those in as really long prompts. That's usually where I get all my icons. I go find an icon set I really like. I copy and paste the 6 SVGs I need and make a really long prompt. And then also going above and beyond, I've been making a lot of tools lately. So not AI as the product, but making a tool I use with a lot of clients, because Vibe is fun and I do it a lot. But lately I've been looking for how can this improve the actual client work that pays the bills. So now we have a lot of tools we use on every client project that were made with AI that are now being used with paid clients. And that's really the coolest part of all this. And it makes all the future work a little bit better. So again, start with visuals in mind. These are just some quick tips on how I would start. And you can start wherever. I use Figma. That's the one I love. It has tons of stuff built in. It's even got an AI maker called First Draft, so you can make a page really quickly. But you can find the same stuff in template libraries around the internet. Tailwind has a bunch of really great examples of full modals and full sidebars and full layouts. And even Canva, I mean, whatever your flavor, Canva has a very generous free plan. It's got nonprofit plans. So wherever you make a visual is fine. And that's some of that design thinking. You can start before you do a prompt. You can tell it what type of font you want, what main colors, what kind of spacing. You can even just make what I would call as a style tile, show it a headline and a button and a stock photo. And that's enough to get a very good jump on an entire landing page or an entire site. Again, you can tweak as you go, but giving it something to start instead of just like a sci-fi banking app, that would end up looking too green and like the Matrix and maybe, AI has a way to really run with one specific style. So if you give it a bit more reference, it can handle it really well and run with that reference really well. So if you start in Figma, you can literally give it a prompt like this. I don't know where I am on the screen, if it's beside me or below me, but give it a prompt like this. This even works in Bolt. Bolt has an import from Figma, but so do so many other agents and so many other tools. But just, hey, code this layout that is at this URL. And then you can even tweak it, like, and change to match our current project colors and ... So you can give it a layout. You can have it, transmorph the layout in the middle and still write working code. And it usually comes out beautifully. So starting with something visually is a good way to get 80% of the way there.
I'm seeing a common theme here. You are a big fan of long prompts, which is really interesting because that's not, this is, not always the advice that I hear people giving. So this is very interesting because I think you clearly have a very specific methodology on how you're creating these long prompts. You're not just dumping a bunch of random garbage in there and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and this one's fun because it's kind of specific, because you can imagine what would be in that Figma link. That's a Figma link to a frame. So in there wouldn't just be a flat picture. There'd be structured data that shows how far elements are from each other and what the actual fill hex codes are. And there's a lot more data. And you can also just upload a screenshot and say, make this layout. But when you do that, it guesses a lot more. So if you'd imagine that Figma URL is really 7 chapters worth of long information. So this prompt is huge, but when it's done, it should be a lot more accurate than take a guess at a bank landing page. So I like to start with as much info as I can get it. And again, exceedingly long prompts. Prompts so long, sometimes I wouldn't even be able to read them. You can have AI make these prompts for you. Say, make me a bank landing page and tell me what that prompt would be. And it'll write you a long prompt and you can kind of tweak it and go. But a lot of times I just use, like I said, I collect stuff from around the internet of, let's add a new feature section. This would be a prompt. Write some copy out of thin air, use this layout and tweak it to match. So this is just copy and pasted HTML from the Tailwind CSS website. This happens to be a really nice 3-up feature section. And when AI uses this, markup for markup, it's going to come out looking great. It'll look better than if it invented the layout itself, but it's still going to make sure it matches to everything and writes the copy for you. Similarly, this is one that's kind of doesn't look long, but would be like, hey, we're going to change our layout to this fancy sidebar thing we found that has JavaScript and is React. But you just tell it, go install it with this prompt. And you're even now prompting it to run its own prompt. So this is like a command line thing, but most agents can do that. And Claude inside of Bolt can do that. So you can just say, hey, I found this neat thing that I have no idea how to run. Can you install this for us? And it, of course, will install it for you and run it for you. 20 years I made kind of just visual websites that looked pretty but didn't do much. Now the doing part kind of got simple because you can just say, hey, there's a React shader plugin that I don't know how to use, but will this work? And of course that'll work, and it will apply that all for you.
And actually, that ties into this question we got on LinkedIn from David. Is it possible to create a chatbot with Bolt? It is now incredibly easy to do so, generally speaking, in one single prompt, right?
Yep.
Like the hard part's actually what else? You know,
Yeah.
what do you want it to look like? You know, like what do you want
Yep.
all the subtleties and the visual and everything? If you literally just say, I want to make a chatbot powered by OpenAI,
Yeah.
that's not a long prompt. That's not a good prompt.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a
crazy
terrible
how
and
quick
it'll
it
work.
goes now.
It'll work anyways. Like
Yep.
that's really where we're at with this.
Yes. And I've got a few examples in a bit that shows a built-in chatbot into a project. So I think we've got some good ones coming. But one I do the most for every build is I change out the icons. It's one of the first things I do. That'd be one of my main tips is change the fonts, change the icons. And it's extremely easy because there's so many good icons out and around in the world. So Google Material has a set. Let's see, I can jump around. I like one called Hero Icons. They have a big old set of icons. When you find one you want, you can literally just copy the SVG or copy the JavaScript you need. So get what you need and go back and use that in your really long prompt and just say, change the home icon to this, change the chat icon to this. SVG is great like that because it's not even uploading a file. This is just markup. And some agents and some uploads don't let you even upload SVG because it kind of looks at it and it's not sure what file format that is, but you can just paste in icons from virtually anywhere. Even in Figma, there's a set I use quite frequently, or anything. You can find like a bunch of kind of cooler shapes than you'd normally see. You can easily just grab the entire thing as SVG, just copy as SVG, paste that in, and now that's the icon you're using. So swapping icons and swapping colors is a really quick way to just looking more custom. Even this whole, I keep saying just grab stuff from the internet. This whole slide deck is from Figma. Like this shape, all these slides are from Figma. It's just built in and it looks good. So that's what we're using. So one of my main advices is use what's there and then tweak it to not look like what's there. And again, you kind of have to talk to the robot like a robot. So you start with that big, long prompt. You take these big old chunks of bytes of, okay, hey, that got us 80%. Oh, look, now we're 90% to what I would really imagine. And then you hit all those nice to haves of icons and fonts and spacing and color and responsive. And that's when your prompts get more and more specific of, in the third section, find that button and change it to, which is just kind of how it goes. And that's even if you're a human coding, it's like this big chunks and then more and more and more and more specific. So don't be afraid to take big swings up front. And then by the end, your prompts can literally be change the color of that specific link, add an icon to the fourth, and it gets that specific and it works. And then the last one is if you need a certain tool, now you can just make it. If you need a CMS, if you need a chatbot, if you need an image editor, if you need a brand guide thing, if you need a thing, you can just make it, and you can make it in an afternoon, and then it's kind of free forever if you host it right and if it's not using any giant APIs. So now I've got a slew of tools where we have live brand guides for all our clients, and we have image tools like digital asset managers that holds all their files in a GitHub repo and lets us tag them and categorize them and lets us add brand colors where we need it. Even CMSs now. Sometimes I skip using a CMS at all and just have AI write a little function that lets you submit a recipe or make a pull request to the GitHub repo. There's so many options where you can just make these tools, and then these tools make every project you do from then on look better. So these aren't exactly one trick, type this prompt in and your thing is better, but it's a collection of things that makes every project you do a little better. You'll have a brand guide so your brand looks better. You'll have image tools so you have a photo set that matches and is approved by the client. So this stuff is kind of the secret sauce of what I'm doing with all the AI. And now quick intermission before I go into just a ton of show and tell, because I have a lot of projects we built with Bolt. Are there any questions or comments for that first section?
I think a question that I'm just anticipating from some of the more beginner users is around, how to think about, okay, you've got the different icon libraries and that kind of thing that you can pull from pre-made stuff, which is an excellent point. There's very little, in my opinion, when you're using a tool like Bolt, honestly, that you should be making completely from scratch, because you've got all the design libraries, the icon libraries. You've got sites like 21st.dev that have full-on components that you can just copy into your app. And then whenever it comes to functionality, for example, chatbots or sending emails or updating third-party CMS systems, there's APIs for all that. You can use the OpenAI API to power a chatbot. You can use the Resend API to send emails. You can use the Pika, PICAOS.com, for those who aren't familiar, API for interacting and updating any kind of third-party systems like CMS and Google Drive and etc. You shouldn't really be building any backend functionality from scratch, because 99% of the time that already exists and can be accessed via an API. If when it comes to icons and components, you can borrow anything really that's complicated visually from somewhere else. If it's anything that you're using on a normal website, right? Like for having image galleries and that kind of stuff, you should exhaust all those resources first. And then only if you need to actually create something truly bespoke and that no one, it's exactly the design you want that no one else has ever made, should you be, going into Figma or trying to code custom components. I mean, I assume you would agree with me there, Clark.
Yes, I'm writing less code by hand than ever. I'm probably writing more code collectively because I have agents doing it for me. But first is always a large shotgun prompt to see how close we can get in one go. And then I go back and sprinkle in all that stuff. Like you mentioned, I think it's great to mix all your tools. I know a lot of times people share a really nice hero section, kind of like this. And generally they mention that they used something to generate the image, like GPT image, and then something to animate it into a video like Midjourney or Klein or Kling, and then something else to add a little bit of audio. So like they chain tools together to get some of these effects. And there's tons of ways to do that. Some are free, some are not. Mixing and matching all of them is how you start making kind of interesting stuff. And again, they're all over the place and they're readily available. So like this background I generated with a GPT prompt of just, abstract purple fintech shapes, and then dragged it into Midjourney and told it to animate it on a loop. And that's what that background is. And it adds a ton to this section. And it was just something we kind of pulled out of thin air off the internet, and it works really well.
Very cool.
Now I'm just going to jump on through on some random kind of show and tell. Again, feel free to jump in with questions. These are just designs we've made with AI that I think turned out well. Back for the world's largest hackathon, we submitted a thing called Superfund Draw that lets you make children like, coloring books. And most of this is AI. The template came from Tailwind with some adaptations made with AI. This book effect was just a prompt of make a 3D page turning children's book effect that goes on a loop and accepts 12 images. When I do that voice, that's me talking like a robot. That's my prompt voice. But again, most of this was just spoken out, made with a prompt. And then this little video probably shows it better than I could show it quickly. But you can easily give it a prompt and tell it how many frames you need, and it will write the story sequentially for that many frames, draw it all in. And again, this uses an API to do all this, which is neat. But again, this design was mostly turnkey, and I don't think it looks that way. But a lot of this is straight from the Tailwind kit. A lot of it is me adding stuff like these backgrounds that come from our coloring book tool, giving myself a silly little avatar. So just dressing up something that would have been out of the box, changes it and makes it look like a very complete tool. I was going to go through how that works a bit, but you can see that in here there's pop-ups and there's credits and stuff that, again, would have taken a long time to come up with this from scratch. But most of these are just copy and pasted and adapted right away, done in an evening. And there's a full kind of working tool underneath it. One that we've been using a lot more lately that we built in Bolt is a brand JSON. So this pulls from a Figma file and detects your logos, your fonts, your colors, your icons, and a bunch of stuff, and then makes you a ready-made brand kit from it. So you've got your colors sorted by name with their hex values. The fonts, it knows if it's a Google font and links it up with the correct weights and with download links. All the logos are here on their correct background colors. And this is just kind of a one-click thing that comes from inside Figma. Let me show you how that works. But again, built with AI, and now we're using it on multiple clients. So this is the little plugin. It scans the file and knows what's in there. It finds the brand green. It finds the neutral color. It knows the fonts being used. And this is a working Figma plugin that was built with code from Bolt and some code from Claude. And then it makes that JSON that's what powers this little site. So we have a lot of brand kits up and running now where you can even copy and paste the icons as SVG. What I just kind of showed is out in the wild. I've now built my own version of that kind of stuff. We also have a digital asset manager that started in Bolt. So a lot of clients need a way to host their 150 stock photos that everyone knows they can use and when to use them and how to use them. And it turns out digital asset managers are wickedly expensive. Like I went looking around for quotes. I got quoted 12 grand for a year. Even on the first one. And I'm like, come on, man, it's a Dropbox. We can build a Dropbox. So one night I sat down and built a digital asset manager that holds all the files. And it even has like full kind of tagging and people and products, and all of this data is stored in this image file. So this is EXIF info inside of this image, which is now just in GitHub. So again, a tool that using on multiple clients to keep us looking better. We can come in here and find the bits that have the product images in them versus like the original photos that don't have them yet. Like here's Nick with and without his product bit. So just really nice way to keep track of a lot of stuff. On that note, we have built with Nano Banana, the new image editor. This is one where I've even baked in a chatbot. So this is all through the Vercel kind of API that does images and other stuff. I've added some images. It's asking me like, what kind of color would you like to add? And I can tell it, hey, we're going to add neon green to these. Run a batch. And now these should finish here in about, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. This is a trick we do with a lot of our clients. We take kind of boring stock photos and just make sure to add their brand color. That's another really good tip of just adding the brand color to something is an easy way to make it match their system. So this guy was wearing orange. Now he's wearing green. Let's see. She was capping wine. Now the wine is green. So it's a tool that we made in an afternoon that we're now using with almost every client, and our clients are using it by themselves. It's just been kind of a really neat one. And this one was kind of fun because it turns back the cost. Like it cost 4 cents to change that image. So we kind of joke, come on, that would have taken us at least 10, 15 minutes to do manually in Photoshop. So it's kind of fun to see the savings of what it can get you. Talking about
that is really cool. I like that Nano Banana one quite a bit. I can think of a lot of quick use cases for Nano Banana apps. Like you get to, because you can that's the cool thing. You know, I think I saw someone in the chat, why would you make a chat app? They can just go to the tool. True, but the thing is, those tools are totally unstructured. You have to know how to prompt the tool and get the output you want. Also, this is actually a better interface than Nano Banana. Let's be real. If you're really trying to do work at scale here and in batches, this is way faster. But also the prompting, right? The cool thing about building apps like this is you can automate all of the prompt that you're then sending into Nano Banana. So you've got just templates right there to do the work that you need without having to custom generate that template every time.
Yep. I've found I'm writing, people normally call that a wrapper. Like you write a wrapper on top of an API and you think, yeah, why was that needed? It's like, well, I was doing kind of specific things. Like this one can generate a new photo out of thin air. Like it made other views from the original. So say you needed to extend a photo set and it can do 10 of those at once. So you can run a batch quicker than you could in the Google Gemini thing, giving it one, giving it one, giving it one. That was kind of where this Superfund Draw came from. It's like, hey, what if I want to make 8 coloring sheets at once? And it fires them all synchronously and makes them all at once, which is kind of neat. I think I've built an interface that's faster than if you just use GPT.
Yeah, I think so. Just from watching there and being able to multi-thread, that's pretty cool. Another question we had earlier from LinkedIn was around JSON prompting. You mentioned that briefly. I know this is a semi-hot topic. Oh, this was another one from Philip. It looks like I've seen some stuff on X about this. Like, what are your thoughts on using JSON in your LLM prompting?
It's really great. It's mainly just because it's some amount of structure. So LLMs can understand really kind of any structure. JSON is really uniquely formatted to be clean and structured. And I've even started experimenting with that. So this brand JSON I was playing with really follows the format of WordPress, has a very popular theme setup called theme JSON, where you name your colors, you name your fonts, you name your sizes, and then the WordPress theme uses all that like collectively at scale. So I'm toying with that idea here, and it's the same way. Like this actually does give you a JSON file of all of this information. Even these SVGs are inside of this JSON file, which again, it seems crazy, but the whole thing is like not even a meg. It's smaller than one big stock photo. So you could feed this entire file into an LLM or into Bolt and say, hey, make me a landing page while using our primary brand colors and our secondary colors. And it will mostly just follow the rules. Again, you might have to poke it and prod it a bit to change some things, but JSON is a great way to give it a ton of information all at once. And other LLMs can write this JSON for you too. If you go and tell it like, hey, write me a prompt that includes, and that's image generators do that a lot, like this scene, this camera style, this render style, this. So it's a great way to pass a lot of info.
100%. Yeah, that exact comment just dropped in the chat. And then another question we had from Daniel and Jonathan was, what plan is Clark on for Bolt?
Right now, I'm on the Bolt team plan because I was trying to drag my brother into it. I've got like a non-technical, well, it's pretty technical, but mainly like a leadership type role brother. And I've been like, come on, man, come dip your toe in. But mainly it's my usage gets close to used each month, and his usage is almost untouched. So still working on him. But generally lately I'll get a warning here and there that I'm getting close to my usage, but honestly, I don't go over on most stuff. And again, I do mix and match a lot of subscriptions. So sometimes I start in Bolt and we'll pull out to GitHub, and then from GitHub, I'll drop it into Netlify, and then it's a whole ball of wax. But I'm using, an array of subscriptions, most at kind of the entry or team level. None of them are the $300 a month stuff. I'm mainly on entry level, probably 3 or 4 different subscriptions I'm kicking around at any given time.
Very cool.
I guess
we gotta get those numbers up, though, man. I mean, we got to get we got to get your brother using it. I mean, we got to get some friends and family on the. You already have a Teams plan. It's so easy to just add another seat. Let's keep this going.
Yeah, we're getting close because I'm dragging my dad's towards it now. He needed a little website. Like, I could do that in Bolt in an afternoon, and we've got it set up. And soon, for copy edit. So that's the weird thing. We don't need a CMS. We don't need a new login. He can just go to Bolt and say, hey, change where it says sign up to get in contact. You can just go in there and type how someone of his age would edit a document, and it will just work, which is kind of wild.
Very cool. Okay. Looks like we are coming up close on time here. Let's see if we got a few more questions in the chat here. I guess maybe while we let some people drop their last minute questions in the chat, let's go ahead and I will drop the links here for how folks can get in touch with each of you if they would like to. So, you guys let me know what should I share here so folks can get in touch with each of you.
Yeah, so I'm mainly just on Twitter and or X. I still call it Twitter because I'm old. Just at Clark Lab, my name Clark, and then LAB, like laboratory, or anywhere you look up Superfund is probably us. But again, feel free to come find me.
Yeah, and for me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's /Laurel Byers, but you can just look up Laurel Byers. I'll share it in the chat here. And then I'm also on Instagram. I actually just started an account called Laurel Designs It All. So you can see me exploring AI and a lot of physical creativity, things like stained glass as well. Just kind of everything creative will be there. So that's where you'll find it.
Very cool. I got those links in the chat and shared on screen here. But I I want to say, well, I'll save my, okay, let's do Q&A and then I'll take us out here. These were great presentations. Let's see here. A few last questions. Here was a question. How do you animate your videos on Bolt? I think you'd mentioned this earlier, Clark, how you create some of your animations.
Yeah, I could probably find a link, because I actually made a video about how to make product videos, because I feel like that was the thing that stood out in a few of those Bolt submissions. I had a real flashy, show the product, play some songs, show the product. And they're pretty easy once you kind of understand keyframes. You got to imagine, okay, I need a thing where we show it, a thing with my headline, a thing that says sign up now. And once you picture those main frames, it's just kind of animating between them. And a lot of tools let you pop in, pop out, or fade, or explode. So once you know your keyframes, it's very easy. But yeah, I can find a link to share. So I usually do them with Figma, believe it or not.
Very cool. Let's see. Let me go back through the queue here. Well, this was a nice comment we got earlier about Laurel's presentation. Not a question, though.
I'll take it.
Oh, here was a good one. This was a good one that came up about 30 minutes ago. I don't know if Lego Beast is still here, but I thought this was a great question. Like, design terminology, right? What's the recommended resource there? Because with prompting, it's like the specific words are sort of like the magic spells that unlock the results that you need. So curious if you have any thoughts on that, either of you.
Well, there's a lot of the courses I shared where you can learn the terminology and things from there. But I mean, you could make a custom GPT with what you just said there and be like, teach me the basics of design terminology. And then have it like correct you if you're using it wrong and use it to test your prompts, right? That's how I would do it. In fact, when I saw that, I was about to go build one, but there's like, no, I'm too interested in what Clark's saying. And then trying to understand, like, I guess, broader from just like visual design terminology. I think the laws of UX is really helpful in broadening your understanding of. It's in my slide deck, but I'll share it really fast in the chat.
Very cool. If you're not here, what are you even doing? I agree. Clark is a legend. I also agree. Okay, here's a question on long prompts, which I assume the answer is no, but are you giving your prompts as a text file, or are you just pasting them into the Bolt chat?
I'm usually just pasting them in. It depends on kind of, every now and then it'll get so long, I will put it as a text file and just tell it, hey, I've provided documentation in rules.txt. A lot of times that's whenever I'm copying documentation from like a website that has how to implement a React library. I'll just copy and paste 200 pages worth of docs and say, here you go, please learn how to do this. And then it pretty much learns how to do it.
Yeah. The other thing you can do if you're worried about like filling up the chat history, this has been mentioned in chat a couple of times, but we just implemented a command where if you get /clear and hit enter, it will clear out the context window in Bolt. So I would recommend after you complete every major like section or feature or whatever, I would just go ahead and clear it. Before you do that, if you're like, oh no, I don't want to lose the context, just tell Bolt that you want to have a README file and for it to just dump the critical aspects of the different sections of your site, the functionality, and which code files are related to those pieces. And then you'll have all your context there. And then you can clear the chat out and Bolt will only need to go back and pull that stuff into short-term memory if it needs to. The new agent's pretty good about understanding when it needs or doesn't need additional context, but you can always just tell it, hey, buddy, you need additional context. Go look at the READMEs and it'll go pull in the relevant section. So highly recommend that approach. We've got a question here. Do you think it's possible to administer a whole e-commerce website from Bolt?
Yes, I would guess so, depending on what your backend is. But Shopify has a very full API and front-end wrappers and Shopify checkout, which means the cart is on their own little URL. So depending on how creative you want to get, it should be relatively trivial if you were going to use Shopify. And honestly, anything would work as long as they've got an API that's documented. Claude would figure it out.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I haven't personally tested the Shopify integration myself. I know, but that is also the advice that I would give. And hit us up on Twitter if you're having any issues. We would be happy to hear about that and help smooth the path out for you. Of course, if you're just selling 1 or 2 or 3 things, you could just use Stripe or PayPal as well, and just keep it super simple. But that's not necessarily a fully fledged e-commerce platform. Another question we had, iterative prompting. Normally the advice I give people, and that's because most people are not constructing their prompts the way I would like them to be. I advise the opposite, actually, of what Clark has described here today, which is very small, very specific prompts. I also have had great success with comprehensive long prompts, but you better have gone through what Laurel talked about today around really understanding what are the problems that you want this application to solve. And then you better construct a very nicely structured and specific and correct prompt to make those things occur. But iterative prompting absolutely works as well. I think especially like, in my experience, what my process, sort of a merger of these two, I like a long and comprehensive prompt for the first one that describes all of like the UI and UX of at least the first screen of my application. And then from there, I'll iterate and refine and add like backend capabilities, the integrations for like email or AI or what have you. And get the database set up and things like that, more in like iterative prompts. But I know everybody has their own approach. Laurel, do you have any kind of thoughts on this balance of long versus iterative approach?
Well, Clark has many years of practicing this. So I think that's, you can do a really solid, epic, giant prompt if you know what you're doing, right? But if you're still figuring it out as you build, I think the iterative approach is right. And that's what I've relied on, because I've done like HTML and CSS coded prototypes before vibe coding. And that I learned a little from like how to manipulate things through vibe coding now. But I still feel like I work better when I work in small chunks. And then if I run into an issue, I will go back into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. And it actually like stops at that little sprint that we made. And we work through the issue and I go back and forth. And then it says, would you like to continue to the next like chunk of stuff you want to have developed? And then we'll move on. So that's the way I've done it. But again, you need that core structure. So whether it's the landing page, but I'd also say the navigation sitemap needs to kind of be flushed out. It doesn't mean there's pages that exist yet for those things, but at least knowing that that's how it's going to expand has saved me a lot of headaches. And I've also been through a lot of headaches by not thinking of that.
Nav is a great place to start too, because even in some of you don't even know you need routes and you need the functionality to even have pages and URLs, and you're kind of far in and go, oh, I need to add a React router.ts. You don't know what any of that is. So getting that set up early is very helpful, because it's not always just plain link. Sometimes it needs a dependency if you're doing something fun. And then you think, oh, I wish I'd have done that before.
That is an excellent point. And since Kate's not here, I get to use my favorite view of all three of us side by side, super zoomed in. She does not like this view, which I do get. But that's a great point, right? I work at Bolt, so I do happen to know what like React router is very loosely, but like I don't really know as a human. I would never really be able to implement that with my fingers per se. That's probably a great reason why mentioning the nav menu right up front is important, because that is some core aspects of how React gets set up. So I had not thought about that. So
just asking process planning now. So anything I missed is usually the last thing I type with a question mark. And I'm like, did you think about how to animate? I'm like, you're right. Let's go side to side on those animations. And it'll ask like 10 extra questions. And then your process doc is that much more accurate. Like, oh, perfect. Yeah, build it like that. Now we don't have to do that later. So anything you can get sorted in that initial fixing, and anytime you can be very specific, even for a specific section, is great. And I saw someone mention about cost. Normally the cost is very proportional to the amount of change. So even 10 prompts, if they're little tiny, change that line, change this line, shouldn't cost any more than one big prompt with 10 instructions in it. Roughly.
But what will cost you a lot of money? one big terrible prompt that makes Bolt completely confused. And so, yeah, again, the planning piece here that we've been talking about all stream of really making sure that you've done like maybe, it's like the measure once,
Yes.
measure 10 times, cut once philosophy is very, very relevant here.
The design.
I guess just I'll say to point out for beginners too, Bolt has an official plan mode now. So there's like a toggle between build and plan, just if you thought we were talking kind of hypothetically, but you can switch between the two. And in plan mode, it will never make changes, never write code until you tell it to. And normally that's a really cheap way to get a lot of planning done and then say, okay, now go. So they added that, I think, in V2 a few weeks back. But yeah, that plan mode is essential.
Yeah. Yeah, we had discussion mode before that, but nobody really knew what it was. It seems like and only 5% of users use discussion mode. I used it constantly I don't know how you could use Bolt without it, but nonetheless, I think plan mode is getting a little more airtime because it has the word instead of just an icon. So there you go. UI design is very important. Adrian asks, any suggestions on how to get my non-technical marketing and design team involved? Yes. Hit me up on Twitter and we will literally, I'll personally run a training session for your team because I'm really trying to work with a lot more folks now that are trying to adopt the tool into their businesses and get their teams on board in these exact scenarios. And so, hit me up on X. I'll drop it in the chat here momentarily. This goes for anybody. If you've got a team of, let's say 5, 10, 15 people, and they need some training and advice and help getting started, I'm happy to help.
Can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
I was just saying internal hackathons because people don't always, they get stuck thinking they can only change one thing. Say, what would you do if you could, you can change anything, and they'll spend a week making new things. So it's just showing them they can make new things.
Yeah, and getting them out of like a hackathon that it can be related to the business, but also like it can be absolutely outside of it because they fear that people will judge them on what they're building that's related to the business. So if you completely remove it, add in the goofy, playful prompt that you're like having everyone kind of go after, it makes it more fun as well. So I think that's a good. I was just gonna say though, there's nothing wrong using Figma, but I understand wanting to get people to do coded prototypes faster using Bolt or whatever is out there. So don't be too harsh on them. It's a good way to gather feedback. And I don't know if Bolt has done this yet, but I'd be curious to see its future of how people leave feedback on a vibe coded product.
People love to leave comments on the thing. I don't know why, but they like to put the right on the thing. So.
Which, hey, Martin, Tomek, if you're looking, maybe comments right on the thing. They seem to be pretty popular. So just an idea. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can honestly do this all day, but we are like a good amount over what we had scheduled here. So I think to be respectful to all of our viewers here that are joined us today, and to our incredible guests, I'm going to wrap this thing up, but we're going to be doing more of these. We've had some really good ones recently that you can find on our YouTube channel. The recording will be there the second that I end the stream. And the links that we mentioned and the resources that we talked about and dropped into chat, we will put those in the description there. On YouTube. So head over there and check those out. And I'll put my X in there too, because I didn't get a chance to drop that in here for the free demo sessions that I apparently am offering. So awesome. Well, Clark, Laurel, thank you so much for joining us. I know we all learned a lot here and really appreciate your time and efforts putting these together and helping educate the community.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, great job, Clark. It was great getting to meet you.
Thanks. Good to meet you. Yep.